I try to speak in English because some people are non-German speakers here, and Aaron as well. And Aaron and me, we try to have this little Vortrag. It's not very long, it's 20 minutes for each. And I start because his English is better than mine, and I don't want to embarrass me.
You won't.
Can I embarrass me?
It's better than my German. So.
Ja, okay. Ja, das ist mein Vorteil. Ich könnte es auch auf Deutsch machen, aber ich will es jetzt mal auf Englisch versuchen. So, welcome, Mrs. Hildegund Ammonshauser. Thank you for the invitation. My name is Tex Rubinowitz. Tex Rubinowitz is not a name; it's a pseudonym, and I stole it from a American rockabilly singer. I'm a singer by myself as well, and I love rockabilly and psychobilly, this hard version of rock and roll, pure and trashy version. And I adopted his name, Tex Rubinowitz, because it has a good sound, Tex Rubinowitz. It sounds very good. His name is even better, but he can say something later about his name. Tex Rubinowitz is a Jewish name. I'm not Jewish, and I didn't know that at that time, 30 years ago, as I adopted the name Tex Rubinowitz. If I knew it at that time, I wouldn't dare to adopt it because it's a bit problematic. Anyway, I'm from Germany, from the north of Germany, a little town called Lüneburg, from the Lüneburger Heide. And in English, Heide means heath.
Hampstead Heath.
Heath, yeah, Heath. Also gelernt ein bisschen. Und ich bin seit, das Bier, since 32 years in Vienna. I live in Vienna and started to, verstehen Sie mich eigentlich? Nein, Sie hinter der, nein, Sie, verstehen Sie mich? Ja, okay. I started to study art in Vienna. My professor's name was Oswald Oberhuber. Oswald Oberhuber is a man from South Tyrol, I think, or from Tyrol, and he was never present. So I quit studying after 1 week, but I visited the university afterwards as well, because there's the canteen, and the canteen was cheap. Anyway, and I think universities are a good place for communication and meeting people and change ideas and so on. In the beginning in Vienna, I started to draw cartoons for newspapers, for four cartoons a week. I do it still since 30 years. 4 cartoons a week is 200 cartoons a year, and Sie können sich das ausrechnen. Besides, I do other things. Sehr lustig, ne, oder? Finde ich überhaupt nichts. Because my cartoons are very fast, so I need 20 seconds for one cartoon. It's very fast, so I have a lot of time. In my spare time, I do other things like making music. I'm the singer and playing trombone and fiddle. Not together, because this would be complicated. Singing, playing fiddle and trombone, but maybe it's möglich. Ich weiß nicht, possible. Anyway, do music, but not as much anymore as I was younger. And I do paintings and art. I'm interested very much in art, and I have my class here. The theme, das Thema, the main theme is Hommage to something. Hommage. It's ein sehr dehnbarer Begriff. And because I'm interested in music very, very much, I adore, for example, ABBA Slade. Slade is a band from Great Britain, from Wolverhampton, and the older people here in the room maybe know Slade. Aaron knows Slade from another point of view, and another band called Suicide. So anyway, Slade, Suicide, and Sparks, a band from America. So these S's, and I did an exhibition in Vienna last year when the Eurovision Song Contest took place in Vienna. Took place in Vienna. I don't like the music of Eurovision Song Contest, but I like the idea of Song Contest to do like we Europeans are a happy family and so on. It is not a happy family, but for one Saturday evening in May, they pretend to be a happy family. And I had an exhibition in Vienna at the Museum Leopold, and this is a picture from this exhibition. It's kind of an homage to singers from the song contest who are not the winners, and you see it. They are not the losers. They are the null pointers. They didn't get any point, and this is very, very hard to get nothing, because nowadays in song contests they have many points. They have 12, 10, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 1 points. And in the beginning, in the 60s, so the song contest is 60 years old. In the 60s, they had only 3, 2, and 1 point. So it was easy to get nil points, and but it is very hard to get nil points. In the room, in the entrance of my exhibition, homage to the null pointers, you see me here in the corner sewing. Sewing is right. Sewing with a machine. Sewing with a machine, and I find it interesting to sew. But sew is a saw. No.
S-E-W. So
okay. It's not so easy because the machine is like an animal, and it sucks the stuff. The what? Plot. The cloth. The machine sucks the cloth in it and do what the machine wants, not what you want. And I find it very interesting. It's a kind of a Zufalls thing. And I stitched. It's very, very small to see here in one corner. Here is I stitched two members, two artists from this last song contest. They are from Finland, and they are Down syndrome people for a punk band called Pertti Kurikan Nimi Päivät. And Pertti Kurikan Nimi Päivät, they didn't win the song contest, and they are not. They didn't get 0 points. Austria get 0 points. Yeah, it's unthankful. But I think Down syndrome people in our society are on the surface, it's am Rand irgendwie kind of null pointers. Nowadays they have chances, but some years before it would be hard. And I wrote some text on the walls in this museum. And as I say, I wish that they would win. This idea is very, very heartwarming, but they didn't do anything. And I stitched them on a Windel. What is Windel in German? In English? Nappy. Nappy. I stitched them on my nappy. My old nappy. So my mother gave me my old Stoff nappy. And so I like textures and I like materials, and this was my first experience to stitch something with a machine. These Down syndrome people. Okay, I like to talk a lot. So my assistant, since 2 days, I talked. Ich habe sie so wahnsinnig gequält schon. Also Entschuldigung, Sonja. Okay, I go further. So this is one part of the exhibition, this homage exhibition. These singers from Finland in the middle, and from Yugoslavia and Italy and Portugal and so on. And I use wood. I like old wood with warm holes in it and so on. But it's forbidden in huge museums to use old wood because the worms could eat or wanted to eat probably the other art things like Egon Schiele. So and so they gave me from the das ein schreckliches, horrible word called. If you come with wood that you find on the streets, dann müssen wir das begasen. It's a horrible word, begasen. So I don't want to begasen my rotten wood.
I did something like this and they put it in a freezer.
Yeah, but I don't think that. I think I know it's from moths. To put something.
I had something that had woodworm and it was going into a museum and they put it minus 30 Celsius for 2 weeks.
But I think they are so resistant that the eggs are so strong anyway. So they don't do it in I know it. Sometimes I put jumpers in the freezer when there are moths in it. But the Leopold Museum don't want these games with refrigerators. So they gave me clean wood, but so I painted on these woods with oil paintings and did it in 2 days. It is I think it's 40 singers in 2 days. For me, everything must be fast, and you see maybe. Next to the paintings, there are informations. I need informations for everywhere, everything. So you need, in museums you have the little Texttafel, but my Texttafel is different. It's very subjective, and Leopold Museum allowed me to write on the walls. Even in the Festung is not allowed to write on the walls, isn't it so? So okay. Anyway. So Leopold has money to paint it afterwards. So you see on the surface there's the years. In 1964 there were 4 Teilnehmer from the song contest who didn't get any point. In 65 as well. This is the room I had in the museum, and this is a little cinema here next to behind the wall. And when so it was a great pleasure that the Finnish singers, Pertti, Kurikka, Nimi-Päivät, came to my exhibition. Not only these 4 guys, a whole staff thing. There were 17 persons. Because Down syndrome people, it's very hard for them to get ticket and so on, blah blah blah. And funny thing was that the 17 Finnish persons came to my exhibition, great honor, and the 4 singers, the Down syndrome singers, the first way were straight to the cinema where all these little clips of the songs were, and the other people were here in the next room and so on. That was my little cinema. And here's a little detail. Sabahudin Kurt, he was from Yugoslavia. Yugoslavia was only Eastern Bloc country who participated at the song contest. Anita Traversi, she's Italian, but she sang for Switzerland. So people, the Legionäre, so people from different countries can sing for other countries. So Luxembourg, for example, won the song contest 5 times, but not with Luxembourg singers, but with Greek singer called Vicky Leandros, Après-Toi. France Gall sang for Luxembourg in French and so on. And Céline Dion is a Canadian singer. She sang for Switzerland as well. And Food Leclerc is Okay, this is hard, probably hard for you to explain, or for English-speaking people. He's from Belgium. Food was the first null pointer, but food is a word in German. It's a bit problematic. It says it's a female genitalia.
Okay.
So it's not the reason that he didn't get any point, but he's classic because he was the first null pointer in the history of the song contest. And then I made little posters of participants of the song contest. Eleonore Schwarz, Nur die Wiener Luft. It's easy to understand. She was the first Austrian null pointer. And last year was a song contest, as you know, in Vienna, because Conchita Wurst won the song contest. There are two winners of song contest for Austria, Udo Jürgens and Conchita Wurst, yes. And Eleonore Schwarz was the first nil pointer, and then there were another two nil pointers from Austria called Wilfried and Thomas Forstner. Thomas Forstner's bad luck was that he was singing in Rome, and he sang a song called Venedig im Regen. Venedig, Venice in the rain, in Rome. And people in Italy, so we have one person from Italy here. Is she here? Some people in Italy don't like. They have some problems with rain, and they interpret rain other than. It has other meaning as for example in Japan or so. The life in Italy is on the piazza, and they don't like rain and so on. And this Thomas Forstner sang, he was 19. He sang Venedig im Regen, Venice in the rain, and he get 0 points, nil. And probably half a year later, he lost all his hair. He was depressed and he was hidden and so on. Anyway. But Eleanor Schwarz. And last year, Austria has gotten or gets the fourth 0 points. Gotten? Austria has gotten had gotten the fourth 0 points. So this is my story. And here you see probably the details. The holes are not wormholes. I like art that is trashy and it's cheap, and this is my idea. Ich glaube, ich höre jetzt auf, oder?
Yeah.
Okay, I think it was 20 minutes or something. I don't know. It's not too much. So the idea of what I want to do with my students is to do some similarities to my idea of homage to something, not in a glorifying way, in a way of church worshipping from holy people or something, and with words, with information. Who is this one? Who is Annie Palman? Where is Annie Palman now? Did she suffer at that time? Informations and the mixture of iconographic worshipping and Mitleid, vielleicht empathy or something. And I try my students to push them in this direction, but they don't have to focus on persons or music or something. They can use a beer, for example, or the stone or a toothpaste, for example. Or teeth. I like teeth very much. Teeth. Hey, people, students, think. What? I have a Dias Thema, and you have a Dias Thema as well. Dias Thema. I like Dias Thema very much. Dias Thema. And there's an American filmmaker called Les Blank, Frau Amanshauser lacht. Les Blank died some years ago, and he did a film called Gap-Toothed Women, And okay, I don't have the gap, but a gap to women is a half an hour. And the first supermodel, women's Frauen supermodel, was Lauren Hutton. And Lauren Hutton had a gap, and this is kind of a marker, but one can make something beautiful out of it. Not in my mouth, but in yours. Wir sind Diastema-Kollegen. Also alle Leute, die ein Diastema haben, hey, meine Studenten kommen zu spät, ihr könnt sofort gehen. Alle Leute, die ein Diastema haben, also ihr habt ein gutes Gebiss, also I like Diastema. Ein gutes Thema, Diastema. Okay, thank you very much. But first, also if you want to applause, not now, and ich bin sehr geräuschempfindlich, machen Sie Einhandklatschen, nur mit einer Hand. Also das passt. Okay, thank you very much, Aaron.
Are you doing questions or?
Okay, question afterwards or afterwards?
Okay. Hi, I'm Aaron. I am running the ceramics course here at the summer school. We started at the beginning of last week, and we're basically making sculpture in ceramic material, most of which is going to be fired in an electric kiln at the Festung, the fortress. But we're also building some Romano-British kilns, which is an outdoors wood-fired kiln. We just started building those today, so I'll show you some pictures at the end. I should probably talk a bit about my ceramic studio before I talk about my own work. I run a ceramic studio in London called Troy Town Art Pottery. The images here are of the old Troy Town. I've just moved it to another address, but I don't have any photographs yet because it's not finished. So this is my ceramic studio, but I also I host artists for residencies, 2 at a time. It used to be more, and the idea is that it's for artists who are interested in working with ceramic material but don't really want to go through the usual channels, or are not interested in working with potters or with craft studios. It's like they come in, the knowledge is shared kind of cooperatively from me, from my staff, and also among themselves. And they don't end up with a kind of comprehensive knowledge of the ceramic studio or how to make ceramics, but it's more on a case-by-case basis. They come in with ideas for works, or they come in with works they've made in other materials, and we try to make that work with ceramics and see what you can't do with ceramics and see what ceramics can do for people. I'll show some images. So this is just an overview of the studio.
What is this in behind? What are the colours?
Yeah, so this back wall is our glazed tiles. We make them all from scratch. I have another text which covers some stuff that I might miss out now, but I'll read that in a minute. But these are the glazed tiles in the background, and that's the oven in the corner. Yeah, so here's some more. And these are, when the photographer came, I had 3 works of mine in progress. So these are the raw clay, the uncooked clay. Here are some glazed tiles. We develop all of our own glazes at the pottery. It is important for me. That's kind of one of the reasons I needed my own ceramic studio. Was I was working with ceramics a lot, but I was working with commercial mixtures like from Butz and these pre-made colours, and I wanted to learn to produce my own. Here's a close-up. This is the new studio. This is the only photograph I'm showing of it, but it's the old studio is on the 1st floor, so it's a really stupid place for a ceramic studio because you have to go up and down the stairs. This new one is ground floor, and Yeah, we have greenhouses and a garden, and it's nice. This is in Hoxton in London. Anyone who knows London. So I'm going to show some of my own work. I've been making ceramic sculpture for maybe 5 years or so. I went to the Slade School of Art. That was a joke about Slade earlier. But we didn't have ceramics facilities there. So I actually, in my final year, I went back to my old high school because I remembered that they had a really good electric oven ceramics set up there. Well, I never used it when I was a child, but I asked them if I could go back and sort of learn with their technicians. And yeah, I made some pieces for my degree show there. So here's another one. In terms of size, these are, you don't really get it in the photograph, but they're probably the highest is like this big. You're quite limited with size with ceramics. It gets difficult the bigger you get. This is a big one. This is in 2 parts. I'm really, like ceramics traditionally, it has this kind of holy thing around it. Like everything has to be complete, like one part. But I don't really care. Like I've been trying to teach the students that a bit this week. Like if something is too difficult to have stuck together to fire it all as one piece, we just do it in separate pieces. Same with this one. This is like 10 different pieces.
So is it an exhibition?
This is an exhibition I did at Studio Voltaire in South London last summer. I'm going to talk about the works in context perhaps in a minute, but I wanted to first read a text which I've written for a catalogue which is being published by Tate next year. And I've co-curated a ceramics exhibition which is opening at Tate St Ives, which is the Tate Gallery in the West Country in Cornwall. And this is a exhibition with lots and lots of artists in it, but it's basically a history of the artist and the ceramic studio. And it's in 3 sections. The first section is St Ives and Japan, that kind of interchange in the 1920s and 1930s. Looking at people like Bernard Leach, William State Murray, Shoji Hamada, lots of people. There's about 100 loans in that first room, like 100 pieces. And there's lots of funny kind of ephemera, like we have Bernard Leach's kimono and like some bonsai trees and things like that. And then the second room is looking more at California and the beginnings of this kind of more radical approach to working with clay, this sort of anti-domestic or more kind of large scale. So this is Peter Volkos and his students through to kind of Rudy Ortio, Ken Price, Ron Nagel, going into more 1960s, 1970s and more kind of Bay Area kind of artists. And then the third section has been given over entirely to me. So I'm curating a sort of selection of maybe 15 or so artists who have passed through my pottery in the last 3 years. And they're coming back to make new work, and we kind of have more processes to offer now, so hopefully the new work will be kind of better, more interesting. And then I'm also curating a selection of historical pieces, going from about 200 BC through to the 12th century, and then it jumps from the 12th century to the 1970s. But I'm hesitant to show any images of the works planned for this show because everything is changing still at the moment. But I wrote a text for the catalogue which they're publishing to coincide with it, so I'm going to read it now. I might repeat a few things I've said already, but this is more eloquent than I can talk ad lib. I opened Troy Town in early 2014 in de Beauvoir Town, London. I started the project because I wanted a space of my own to teach myself glazed chemistry and different firing techniques. But I also wanted to see what it was like to open a studio specifically for non-ceramic artists to experiment with the material. Since then, Troy Town has hosted more than 60 artists in residence, and the works produced there have been shown internationally at numerous institutions and galleries. I began making sculptures myself using ceramic material a few years before opening the pottery. After committing somewhat to the medium, I started to feel an odd sense of ownership or protectiveness, as an increasing number of artists around me began to make use of it. I then realized that what I was really feeling was a sense of frustration surrounding the tendency, which I also shared, to continue to treat ceramics primarily as a rarefied and loaded material at the point of viewing the art object. Patinated bronze, carved wood, plastic, these can all be sculptural materials which carry their own individual and interesting production histories, but they rarely seem to weigh on the piece as much as ceramic material does. Sculptures from the ceramic studio are somehow shaded or coloured, hieroglyphed with an ontological and teleological code that is often completely irrelevant to the intentions of the artist. There are delightful phrases of craftsmanship, earthliness, and ancient culture that can be written elegantly into the ceramic object, but this is too readily assumed to be the case. Artists are regarded as having submitted themselves to a material world that has only certain tolerable readings, and which is haunted by some stubborn congenital spirit. A terracotta snake does not necessarily speak of its analogy with a plant pot. Ceramics is a medium that with every passing decade becomes easier for the untrained to manipulate, more rampant, versatile, and demystified, and perhaps more worthy of a clarified position within the wider history of sculpture. I feel that fire clay deserves better to be indelibly coloured by allusions to being useful, the foggy world of craft, or the masturbatory hermetics of the master potter. From the beginning, I described Troy Town as radical and psychedelic, as this sounded like the sort of pottery I would like to work in. I was also interested in exposing others to the quasi-alchemical world of heat and chemistry that the ceramic studio prescribes. The black box machine of the electric kiln, the pursuit of metaphorical and simulative surfaces, the exploitation of exotic materials, plantains and the guts of old mobile phones are in my list of colorant items to throw into a raku firing. We'll be using some of those later this week as well. The management of endless disappointments. These are all things I wanted to ally with what felt like a reinvigorated interest among artists in combining poetic thought and esoteric activity with hand building and haptic discovery. I originally made efforts to ban the vessel from the pottery, if only to discourage potters from applying. The pottery has hosted very few experienced ceramicists because I was interested in seeing what happened when artists responded to a material which they had no emotional connection to or investment in, and which they could use freely with none of those skilled inhibitions which I feel often draw more attention to the limits of the material rather than its flexibility. Because many of the artists who have passed through Troy Town have had no prior ceramic experience, it has been important that the studio has operated in such a way as to provide them with some of the personal and peculiar results they are used to achieving within their normal practices. It was therefore vital that the artists had as much control over the specific surfaces and effects of their pieces as possible, and I have tried to teach most artists who have completed residencies at least the basics of the glazed surface. Ceramics, and specifically glazed chemistry, is a relatively simple, specialized science. But if you allow it to, it will lead you satisfyingly down obsessive, hobbyist rabbit holes in search of, say, a glaze that imitates foaming lapis lazuli, or a bronze which will not run off your piece and weld itself to the kiln. At the time of opening Troy Town, I was bored of seeing a lot of ceramic work at exhibitions by young artists that were almost entirely glazed with commercial mixtures. Commercial glazes are other people's aesthetic decisions and cannot be changed. And the rest of this is a lot of technical stuff about glazing. I think I'll leave it there. So I don't just make ceramics. I also paint and make works in other materials. You can see some paintings on the wall in this show, and these are they're reverse painted glass, Hinterglas Malerei. There's only a German word for this. There's no word in English.
Really?
We can't translate it. Yeah. We have there's I say back painted glass, reverse painted glass, interglass Malerai, which is more that refers more specifically to kind of votive objects or kind of devotional art. So yeah, they're super low tech. It's just masking tape and a toothbrush. So yeah, I'll show some more installation images of this show, which was my biggest solo show. And it was there's a problem with display with ceramics because they suit the plinth so well, but I never really want to show on plinth. So I usually use these kind of tables that you would use in like a flea market or something.
And is this stitched?
Yeah. So I worked with an embroiderer on these. I wanted to kind of write the display mechanism into the exhibition. So we had these canopies made and they were kind of embroidered. And imagery was shared between three things, which was between the canopies, the ceramics, and the paintings. And usually I'm just swapping images between the paintings and the actual sculptures. So this gave like a kind of third output. Did you stitch this by yourself? Or no, I didn't. I did everything except the embroidery. Mm-hmm. I got someone to do that from oil pastel drawings. Mm-hmm. The shoe? The shoe is steel. And these boxes above are, we call them, they're like barometers. You get them in museums. Mm-hmm. Yeah. The humidity versus temperature. For some reason I've forgotten the name. Barometer heißt es. High growth thermograph. We call them. They're actually much more common in German museums still than England. Everywhere has them, but we have the tiny digital ones, and these are these are a really old-fashioned mechanism. They use a horse's hair to measure the humidity. This type uses human hair. Really? So I collect the ones which have they use this human hair at the back. Yeah, here's another one. So this ceramic shoe was, I work with a blacksmith in Scotland, and I basically send him really bad drawings, not deliberately, they're just bad drawings. Of works I want him to make, and he comes back with a really beautiful plan, and then he makes it. But he has his own touches, and I kind of just let him do what he wants with it. For this one, I just sent him. It's like a dog chew. It's a dog, an edible dog toy, but in the shape of a shoe. I don't know if you have these in Germany. Yeah. Do you have this? Do you have the shoe? Yeah. To chew on. Yeah. It's like rawhide, so it's like pig skin, I think. Yeah. You know. But I really liked, once you took it apart and you had the individual pieces, it's the same as a very simple sort of real shoe. But this is also the way the design for the desert boot was bought back at Clark's, this brand Clark's. So the desert boot was, it was basically bazaar cobblers in India seeing British shoes from a distance and copying the design in camel skin. But then that was brought back to London, but they just brought back the kind of individual pieces and made it. But this is the same shape as a desert shoe, which I quite liked. Also, the idea that this shoe as a toy is a kind of joke for humans, but it's disguised as a joke for dogs. And it's like this strange object that's like the product of a non-human mind, you know. There it is. But it looks like steel or something. Yeah, it's steel. Is it? Yeah, it's steel with the coating is like some it's like beeswax and graphite. And I did a show earlier this year in Cologne at Markus Luken Galerie, which was the first show I did of just pictures, which was nice for me, like to do a show that was just paintings, because I think I'm sort of known more for my ceramics, but I probably made more paintings in the last couple of years than I did ceramics. And these again are the Hinterglass Malerai. And this whole series of paintings was based around this image, which is on the screen now, which is it's like one of the largest medieval wall drawings in Europe. and it's in this tiny church in Chaldon in Surrey, which is maybe half an hour's drive from London. And my friend's house as a kid was behind this church. The church is 11th century, his house was like 14th century or something, really, really old. And we used to go and look at it sometimes. And it is a depiction of the Purgatory Ladder. So hell on the bottom and kind of purgatory on the top. I think heaven maybe top left, I'm not sure. There's Jesus in the cloud at the top. But I liked that it was for kind of non-verbal reading, like it splits the composition into a cross as a kind of way of reading it. It's like a comic strip. Yeah. And also the kind of ladder and the bar of clouds in the middle, it stopped me having this sort of blank canvas thing, because I was like, okay, I'll start with a kind of cruciform grid for every painting, and then I'll just do a series of 8 based on this. So the show was called Variations on the Chaldon Doom, which is this. It's called the Chaldon Doom. So this type of painting in English is called a doom, like as in, like, just, yeah, sad, evil. Yeah, they don't photograph very well. They're very reflective in real life, and like where the black paint is, they're like a black mirror. And the paint is kind of accreted in like lots of layers. It's just flicked with a toothbrush. We did some digging today. So this is us starting. I didn't ask permission of Max, I'm sorry. I asked Piero. We've been digging these kilns today. Mm-hmm. So this is the start of our Romano-British kilns, which we're going to be firing towards the end of the week. So we have this nice spot looking over some of the castle walls, and it's basically one large trench where we'll stack up some of the pots and some of the ceramic pieces we've made, and then we start as a fire in a kind of separate trench, and the hot air comes through, and hopefully it will. The works are already cooked in the electric kiln, so we're using these more for a kind of surface decoration. Like we throw cow shit in there and banana skins, copper wire. It's like a melange of stuff.
Excuse me, why do you say cooking? Why not baking?
I say fire. I don't usually say cooking.
No, because I think we say baking. We bake things.
I could say that. Yeah. We say fire. I mean, firing is the technical term with ceramics, but I'm just kind of using different words, I suppose. So if we can get this first one up to the right heat, then we're going to try some medieval glazes in the second one, and so on and so on. We'll see. I haven't done this before, so we'll see how it goes. That's it.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much, both of you. Do you have any spontaneous questions?
I have a question for Eka. Thank you both. I was wondering if there are like stories that you are influenced by. I mean, for the paintings you have shown, but for your ceramics. Because there's this thing that maybe I'm wrong, but there's always this like kind of shelter with a really small door, or is it really?
I think there's with ceramics. One of the things I try and teach people in the studio and here is that you need to be thinking about the kind of whole piece from the start. The geometry of what you're making actually has quite a big influence on the colour, depending on the glazes you're using, because the certain classes of glaze, if you were to put it like that, work very differently on a flat horizontal surface than they do on a vertical surface. There's some glazes which are fine for everything, but I think this is quite interesting because it means that people, rather than making something then painting it in a colour, which is an easy thing to do, you actually let the kind of final thing influence it. And with holes in it and cutouts like that, often you have to make some sort of cutout because that part has to be hollow. So there's always technical things which are kind of written into a ceramic piece as a kind of inevitability, but you kind of, I don't know, make that more baroque or more elaborate or something. In terms of stories, I work with a lot of kind of literary influences and things like that. I'm maybe not so good at talking about it, or it's like too long to start because I'm trying to talk about the studio as well, but I'm very interested in a writer called Peter van Sittard, who he kind of quietly reinvented the historical novel in the 60s and 70s. He's an English author. And he kind of wrote of history as this sort of mosaic. And his books are very kind of labyrinthine and confusing, but they're extremely sort of poetic as well. Yeah, it's hard for me to talk about. This is, but it's this guy Peter van Sittard I'm very interested in, and I don't know, influences from folk songs, which I would take as being similar to literary references, things like that. And I guess like most artists, just having a big mess of images and trying to find a kind of filtering mechanism for that, and me settling on paintings and ceramics and deciding which is best for which. Some imagery doesn't work for the flat picture plane. The paintings are super flat. I can't do perspective in them, so anything that needs the perspective happens with the sculpture. Anything that's like okay to be a flat image or even a cutout, I'm happy to use in a painting, and I find that more enjoyable or something. Yeah.
I also would like to ask a question. I mean, as many of my questions are kind of art historical. I have the feeling that both of you deal also with amateur art or with an amateur approach to your art. Would you say something?
For me, it's amateur art is very important and very interesting in amateur art. Speziell outsider art, like art from people who are not trained in art and who have demons in them and draw them. So we have in Austria this museum in Gugging where disabled, sick, ill persons draw. And this is a long history, starting with Dubuffet, and there are many not ill persons influenced by them. Ill is a wrong word. Ill is a wrong word. I don't know the right word. So in the beginning of the 80s, there were some artists like Jean-Michel Basquiat and Keith Haring influenced massively from these outsider art, and I'm very interested in this because it's very hard to be spontaneous and subjective and not ausnutzen, also diese Sachen ausnutzen, diese outsider art ausnutzen. There is one artist I like very much. His name is Donald Batchelor. He's from US, and he was a teacher here as well. And he was very influenced by these outsider art. He uses sketches and drawings from drunken people and ill people and strange people, and he bought them for some dollars, and then he made a huge artwork of it. And but I know him personally, and I met him 30 years ago in Vienna, and it's kind of a struggle. It's not so easy to this little sketch from this drunk person or not so talented person to put this on a huge thing. It sounds easy, but it's not very easy because the spirit of this situation. I love situations. How do they do it in that thing? And my exhibition in the Museum Leopold has to do with the spirit what was in Vienna at that time, with the song contest and this kitsch thing and this very gay thing, and my paintings are not glamorous, are very cheap, and I like these what you said, this cheap outsider primitive thing. I don't think that I'm primitive. I hope I'm in a way I'm primitive, but I like, of course, these primitive signs and like, probably in Africa there are some hairdressers and they had paint some hair do's, and you only have to point and I want this hair do like you, son. Steve. I would like to have Steve's. It's very nice hairdo, and I have to point at him, and I don't have to read something how you make your beautiful hair. So I'm the visual or pictogram culture of information and. It's not only the picture. It's not only the wood and the worms in the wood. It's a whole context and this naive context I'm very interested in. It don't have to be good. It don't have to be these artworks don't have to be brilliant or technical good. The spirit of this very fast idea and so on.
In me? No, I'd kind of agree. I think it's also hard not to utilize those influences without being patronizing to the situations of the people who made them as well. I work with people with learning difficulties at the pottery. We have like a separate program, like an apprenticeship program, and you have to be careful that you're not necessarily sort of 100% showing or displaying their work with the kind of proviso that you're going to see work made in a kind of altered state of mind. So I just think it's good to treat those people as I'm not saying you don't, I'm just saying it's good to treat those people as artists in a totally normal sense as well. Which I suppose is what you're saying about the difficulty of displaying it.
Not to exploit them. Yeah. This is very important. And Donald Batchelor had a Thank you. Thank God. Donald Batchelor had a problem afterwards. He used all these ideas of using the ideas of these outsiders and so on, and then he wrote something about this Guggen museum where Patienten leben and drawing and selling things, and they have to pay rent for their living, and Donald said it's a problem because they were forced to do something because they have to pay the rent for the atelier and the rooms and so on, and this is not this spontaneousness anymore, and it's a bit ambivalent my point of view. But I love Guggen. If you don't know Guggen, it's worth visiting Guggen. David Bowie loved to go to Guggen when he was in Austria.
Where is it?
Huh?
Where is it?
Next to Vienna, I think 30 kilometers from Vienna. And, it's a museum and this atelier for this disabled, not disabled, it's the wrong word. So it's mentally ill is the wrong word as well. So they are not ill, they are special in a way.
Special needs?
What?
We say special needs or learning difficulties.
Yeah. But Guggen has a long history, so it's very, I think it's very interesting because it's not art, it's outsider art in a way. And this is my This is very important for me. I need this tool. I need Kugelschreiber. This Kugelschreiber is from Helsinki, and I need this.
I was using it. You upset that I was using it. Sorry. I thought it was on the table already.
No, it was mine. It's mine. And I see it sofort.
Do you want to intervene into this communication with another question?
Oh, I have a question. Aaron, do you know Edmund de Waal?
Yeah.
Edmund de Waal. Do you know him personally? Or, Edmund de Waal is an author, but he makes ceramic as well.
Yeah. It's quite different from what I.
Very different.
I'm not a big fan of his.
Not, but from the writing. Not. I love his book, the Hase mit den Bernsteinaugen.
The hair with the amber eyes.
Yes.
Maybe it does better in translation.
Okay. The biggest laugh. Eine Frage. Der Herr hätte eine Frage.
I have a question to you, Mr. Rubinowitz.
Yeah.
You are sophisticated in music histories. Can you please repeat the 0 pointers of the European Song Contest? The last one were the Makers from Salzburg.
Können Sie das auf Deutsch nochmal sagen? Also?
Kennen Sie Sie kennen sich aus mit der Musikgeschichte und haben angesprochen, die gewonnen haben, den European Song Contest, Udo Jürgens und Conchita Wurst. Und wir hatten 4 oder 5 0-Punkte. 4. Können Sie die 0 Punkte noch, Sie wissen das? Die Namen noch einmal wiederholen.
The Austrians?
Ja.
The first Austrian was Eleonore Schwarz in the 60s. I don't know exactly when. Then was Wilfried Scheutz with Lisa Mona Lisa. And the next one was Thomas Forstner with Venedig im Regen, Venedig im Regen, lass uns diesen Traum einfach träumen. It is a song. It's a good song. I like the song, but everything was wrong. To sing in Rome about Venice, and the last one was the Makes. Was very sad. The host of the song contest, you don't give him any point, no point. But Germany hat auch keinen Punkt bekommen, Deutschland. Also es sind vier Nullpunkte. Die Eleonore Schwarz, dann Wilfried Scheutz. Ja, er schreibt das mit, ja, genau. Aber das kann man, glaube ich, auch alles ganz gut googeln.
The other question. I think it's today's a little bit of a talk show, so people
Yeah.
Could you please repeat the name of the church in Surrey?
Chalden, CH.
Sheldon.
CHALDON. Chaldon. Yeah.
And then, would you please pronounce your surname, because I don't know how I should pronounce that.
Angel.
Wow.
It's not a pseudonym.
Yeah, no, but Angel, you write Angel in a different way, so.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, it's the medieval spelling of angel.
Mm.
Not my fault.
You mentioned that in the last year of your education, you decided to work with ceramics, right? And why? I mean, what made you to really go into this, and all of a sudden, how did you start to have this certain interest?
I don't know. I think I was maybe seeing artifacts in museums and things, and medieval pottery, things like that, and thinking of introducing that sort of imagery into my work, and then thinking, well, I should learn to just do this from its original material. I think I was making some works long ago out of cement and maybe clay without firing it as well, yeah, I think it started there. I mean, it's a very sort of like protean material. Like once you have your hand on a bag of clay, like it's quite. I think everyone finds it quite natural, and that I guess that leads certain people more down the kind of rabbit hole than others. But yeah, I think it's the idea of not being fully responsible for the finished product as well, like which is a bit of a romantic idea for a lot of ceramicists, but of kind of submitting to the oven or to the kiln, because yeah, I describe ceramics to everyone I'm teaching as being like a process of managing disappointment. Basically, like you something comes out and you're always like, occasionally it's like, oh, perfect, but most of the time you have to like learn to look at it again or something, which is nice. It's quite grounding. Yeah.
And do you have any idea, Aaron, why there is now this like hype for ceramic as an artistic material?
I don't know. I think some of the kind of back to looking at naive art forms or kind of more primitive art forms, I think that has something to do with it. It's also, I think, slightly a turn against this sort of fabrication fetish, which has been quite prevalent in art schools across Europe for maybe, like, I don't know, the last 10 years. Or kind of a turning against that sort of outsourcing of work to fabricators from like British, like Brit Art and people like that. And it has this kind of one-to-one human scale as well. Like it carries the marks and the size of the body which made it. And I'd like to think it's about that. It's about a kind of re-personalization of material.
Would you also say it has something, it's in reaction to what people call post-intimate art?
Yeah, I don't really know what that is. I mean, I do, but like I think it's hard to define that as an aesthetic movement. I mean, most people who make that sort of work, it's because they don't have any money. Like, you just need your MacBook. So I think it's hard to be too critical about people whose practices are kind of entirely sort of immaterial. Ceramics is expensive, like to set up. Once you have it running, it's quite cheap and you can do loads and loads and loads. But and it requires specific knowledge as well. So I don't think it's to class it as a reaction. I think would be slightly wrong because it's a lot more difficult. And I wouldn't want to disparage anybody who made completely different types of work. But I think, yeah, if you've been making film and editing and or doing like Maya, like CGI, stuff like that, it's suddenly working with the real material. It instantly responds. It has this very strange kind of time arc to it, ceramics, in that you make something, you have to wait 2 weeks, you fire it once, you fire it again. Like most people would lose interest in their work. I do, like, it's, you know, and then you come to glazing and you have to do something different to get the spirit back or something like that. But yeah, it's slow. It's like organic food or something. It's, you know, it's, yeah. Maybe it's that. Maybe it's this, like, yeah, it's earthy.
So thank you very much again for this interesting and exceptional talk.
Thank you.